Captain Elena Rodriguez adjusted her uniform in the pre-dawn darkness of December 24th. At 39 years old, with 9,000 flight hours, she had flown countless Christmas Eve flights, always feeling the weight of delivering families home for the holidays. Her own family waited in California, her mother, her two sisters, and their children, who called her Tia Bird because she lived in the sky. Elena had lost her faith years ago after her father's sudden death when she was 22. While her mother attended daily mass and kept a small altar to the Virgin Mary in their home, Elena found solace only in the precision of aviation. Flight was governed by physics, not prayers. The cockpit was her sanctuary of logic and control. That morning, the airport hummed with Christmas travelers. Flight 1847 would carry 165 passengers from Chicago to Los Angeles, mostly families desperate to reach home before midnight. Elena reviewed the weather briefing with her co-pilot, Marcus Chen, a 28-year-old former Navy pilot. Light snow had fallen overnight, but conditions were clearing. The forecast showed perfect flying weather. In the passenger cabin, children pressed faces against windows, excited about seeing grandparents. An elderly woman clutched rosary beads, praying silently. A young father held his infant daughter, promising her first Christmas morning at home. These were ordinary people trusting Elena to deliver them safely through the sky. At 5:45 a.m., Elena completed her exterior inspection of the Boeing 737. Everything appeared flawless. The aircraft had been thoroughly de-iced, engines inspected, systems checked twice. Marcus had already programmed the flight computers. They were ahead of schedule, which Elena appreciated. Christmas Eve traffic would be heavy, and every minute mattered. As she climbed into the cockpit, Elena noticed something unusual. Her mother had somehow slipped a small prayer card into her flight bag. It showed the Virgin Mary in blue robes. Elena almost threw it away, but instead tucked it into her pocket, a small concession to her mother's persistent faith. At 6:12 a.m., Elena received clearance to taxi. The aircraft moved slowly through the pre-dawn darkness, navigation lights cutting through wisps of ground fog. Christmas decorations adorned the terminal building, their lights twinkling festively. Elena felt the familiar rhythm of pre-flight procedures calming her mind. Tower cleared them to runway 28, left at 6:18. Elena acknowledged and guided the aircraft into position. She performed the final checklist with Marcus, every item confirmed. Behind them, 165 passengers settled into their seats, most unaware of the complex choreography required to lift 80 tons of metal safely into the air. Flight 1847, cleared for takeoff, the tower transmitted at 6:20 a.m. Elena advanced the throttles. The engines responded with their powerful roar. The aircraft began accelerating down the runway. 60 knots, 80 knots, everything normal. Marcus called out, "Speeds as trained." At 100 knots, Elena saw her. A woman stood directly in their path, approximately 800 feet ahead. She wore flowing blue robes that seemed to glow with their own light despite the darkness. A white veil covered her head. Most striking was her complete stillness. She simply stood there, hands clasped, facing the approaching aircraft with absolute serenity. "Aborting takeoff! Person on runway!" Elena shouted, simultaneously pulling back the throttles, deploying spoilers, and engaging maximum braking. The aircraft shuddered violently as the brakes grabbed. Passengers lurched forward against seatbelts. Overhead, bins rattled. The deceleration was brutal, but controlled. "Negative, runway is clear," the tower responded immediately, confusion evident in the controller's voice. "Flight 1847, confirm your status." Elena kept her eyes fixed on the woman. She had not moved. The blue robes remained perfectly still, no wind disturbing them. Her face was young, perhaps 25, with an expression of infinite compassion. She looked directly at Elena, and in that moment, Elena felt something she had not experienced in 17 years, an overwhelming sense of her father's presence, as if he stood beside her in the cockpit, his hand on her shoulder. "Tower, I have visual contact with a female in blue clothing, center of runway, approximately 400 feet ahead," Elena transmitted, her voice steady despite the impossibility of what she was seeing. Marcus stared through the windscreen, seeing only empty runway illuminated by their landing lights. "Captain, I don't see anyone," he said carefully, concern creeping into his voice. He glanced at the instruments, wondering if Elena was experiencing some medical emergency. The tower controller, Patricia Morrison, had 15 years of experience. She immediately checked every camera angle. Her screens showed an absolutely empty runway. Ground radar detected nothing. Infrared sensors registered no heat signature. Flight 1847, all monitoring systems show runway completely clear. Do you require medical assistance? Negative on medical, Elena replied firmly. The woman is still there. She's looking directly at us. Patricia dispatched emergency vehicles immediately. Within 90 seconds, 2 fire trucks and 3 security vehicles converged on runway 28 left, their lights flashing red and blue against the dawn sky. They searched every inch of concrete, finding nothing. Their radio reports confirmed what all the technology had been saying. The runway was empty. Inside the aircraft, passengers grew anxious. A few demanded explanations. Flight attendants moved through the cabin, offering reassurance while having no idea what was happening. The elderly woman with the rosary beads began praying aloud, and several others joined her. Elena sat motionless, unable to look away from the woman in blue. The figure had not disappeared. Instead, she had raised one hand in a gesture that could have been blessing or warning. The fischl. Early morning light was strengthening now, and Elena could see details with impossible clarity. The gentle smile, the deep brown eyes filled with ancient knowledge, the way the blue fabric seemed to shimmer with an inner radiance. Elena, Marcus said quietly, using her first name for the first time. I believe you're seeing something, but we need to make a decision. We're blocking the runway. Time seemed suspended. Elena realized that this moment balanced on a knife's edge. She could dismiss what she was seeing as hallucination, continue the takeoff, and likely face a psychological evaluation. Or she could trust what her eyes showed her, even though every instrument and every other person insisted she was wrong. The woman in blue lowered her hand, and suddenly Elena understood. This was not about her. This was about the 165 souls depending on her judgment. The woman smiled once more, then simply faded like morning mist, leaving the runway empty just as everyone else had insisted it always was. Tower, the runway is now clear, Elena transmitted at 6:34 a.m. Request permission to return to gate for full inspection. Patricia Morrison felt relief mixed with deep unease. Flight 1847 cleared to taxi back. Emergency crews will escort you. The controller had witnessed many strange incidents, but nothing like this. She began reviewing the last hour of radar data, searching for anything unusual in the airspace. What she found made her blood run cold. At 6:19 a.m., exactly 1 minute before Flight 1847 received takeoff clearance, a private aircraft had entered controlled airspace without authorization. The Gulfstream jet, later identified as belonging to a corporate executive rushing home for Christmas, had suffered complete radio failure. Flying at 2,000 feet with no transponder signal, it had crossed directly through the departure path of runway 28 left. The tower's attention had been focused on managing the complex Christmas Eve traffic flow. The Gulfstream had been invisible to them, a ghost in their airspace. If Flight 1847 had departed on schedule, the collision would have occurred at approximately 1,500 feet altitude, 43 seconds after wheels left the ground. At that height and speed, with both aircraft climbing, there would have been no time for evasive action. Patricia calculated the numbers 3 times, hoping she was wrong. She was not. The 2 aircraft would have occupied the exact same point in space at exactly the same moment. The combined death toll would have been 173 people, plus countless casualties on the ground from debris. It would have been the worst Christmas disaster in aviation history. When Patricia called Elena to explain what radar had revealed, her voice shook. Elena listened in silence, then reached into her pocket and pulled out the prayer card her mother had hidden in her flight bag. The image showed the Virgin Mary in blue robes, hands clasped in prayer, with the same gentle smile Elena had seen on the runway. That evening, Flight 1847 departed safely at 8:15 p.m. Elena landed in Los Angeles at 10:47 p.m., delivering every passenger home for Christmas. When she walked into her mother's house at midnight, she found the family gathered around the small altar, praying. Her mother looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I felt you were in danger this morning," she said. I prayed to Our Lady for 3 hours. Elena knelt beside her mother for the first time in 17 years. Marcus later reported that he had felt an unexplainable presence in the cockpit that morning, though he had seen nothing. The air traffic control logs recorded only a routine aborted takeoff due to unidentified traffic. But Elena knew the truth. On Christmas Eve, when 165 people needed protection, the Virgin Mary had appeared on a runway in Chicago, visible only to the one person who needed to see her, stopping a tragedy that would have shattered countless families on the holiest night of the year.